Well, g'day, sand trackers and barefooters. Hope you're doing well today. It's Jono Break, another live feed Tuesday morning. For those of you who are on the east coast of the US, it's Tuesday morning anyway. Everywhere else, it's either Tuesday afternoon, Tuesday night, or maybe you're even getting close to Wednesday. Hope you're coming in well. Hope you can see me. Hope you can hear what I've got to say. And we're going to be together for about another 15-20 minutes. So last week we went through parts of the business model canvas, and we were looking at specifically the customer. And I have a real thing about, how we form customer relationships, how we connect with our customer, and how we build a business that specifically targets the customer. And so today, so that was very much looking at the customer and obviously some of the external considerations of that. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to actually talk more about some of the internal implications. So we're going to look at three things: your key partners, key activities, and key resources. Okay, so these are the things you need to be thinking about. And one of the things I love about this is, and again, I mentioned the customer first, and we did the customer piece last week. Now, if you look at a visual of the business model canvas, you'll see that it kind of has key resources, then all the key stuff, and then the customer stuff on the right. And then underneath, it's got some of the financial considerations and other considerations that kind of cross over both. And so one of the challenges with that is that, having come from the graphic design industry and the marketing space, is people look left to right. So we're led to believe that the business is more important than the customer. And so what we do is and this actually plays into a lot of the way entrepreneurs think. We do actually tend to be better at building our business, constructing our idea, working on our product, than we are thinking about the customer and the end user and whether we're actually creating something for them. That's where I'm going to leave that right now. So we're going to talk about it just purely from the context of what are the internal considerations, what are some of the other things. But if these aren't coming from a customer outcome, then it's not going to really make a difference to your business. And so a couple of things I want to have a conversation about here. So I said with key activities, key partners, and key resources. So when let's look at partners first. All right. So this is the relationship you have, or the relationships that you form, that you have with your business. Okay. Now these are going to be wide and varied. They're going to be other business relationships. They're going to be personal relationships. They're going to be investors, financiers. They're going to be government. Even government can come into partnership. I remember working in a startup 20 years ago, and we were applying for research and development grants at the time. And one of the implications of getting funding, which was sort of at those days in the hundreds of thousands, up to, I think it was up to $2 million maximum, is that if you got these grants, then you had to guarantee something back to the government for the next 10 years, not in terms of paying them back because it was a grant, but in terms of your operation. If you sold the business, you had to pay the money back, all that sort of thing. And so in that sense, the government becomes a partner. Particularly if they're providing grants and those grants have some conditions attached to them. So don't think about that. So key partners, let's just go through those again. So we've got our suppliers, okay? We have manufacturers, people that might be making product for us. Maybe we're using co-packing facilities and things like that. We have business partners and co-founders. All right, very important in the startup space. That co-founder can be the difference between the success of your product and it not going anywhere. Investors, again, another big one for startups, but that's a big one for all businesses. How we get investment, how we get finances into our business. Financiers I put down there as well. One of the things in some of the businesses I ran, we had relationships with banks where we would factor invoices, for example, that would provide us with cash flow. So they became a partner, and their reliability. In fact, one of the banks we dealt with was excellent to deal with. If we were getting customer money in and it was coming in and there was just that gap, that cash flow gap, they would always support us through that gap and allow us to do things like pay bills, pay salaries, things like that. So they become really important partners. And it's not just about what you're providing to your customer, it's how your team functions as well. Okay, so think about your team as a partnership as well. Think about the people around you. What about your personal partners? What about your personal relationships and how they input and how they help you? Okay, so there's a bunch of activities that partners will perform, as we've already alluded to. If you've got investors, if you've got bankers, if you've got suppliers, you've got manufacturers, you've got whatever it might be. Somebody might be doing your human resources for you. Somebody might be doing some of your marketing for you, or whatever it might be. Partners should mesh with our core values and our culture, all right? Don't just choose lowest price. Don't just choose what you think is the best deal. Make sure it meshes with your culture. Make sure they really understand what you're on about, and they're here to actually help you achieve something, okay? Excuse this, the sun must be just shining through the leaves there, so it looks like I'm actually misting up a bit, but I'm not. They should have the same customer focus in mind. All right, so the way they treat you, okay? So I've been working with a customer, with a client at the moment, and they've suddenly been treated poorly by one of their suppliers, which has left them in a precarious position where they had to really shape their manufacturing. It was a problem for them, okay? And so think about that. They need to have the same customer focus you have. Yes, you might be a small provider, but are they in it with you? Are they seeing potential in you? Are they part of that culture? And also looking at the kinds of businesses. So, for example, if you're packing a product that you may be doing a run of 100,000 or even 50,000, and you're going to suppliers who are used to doing tens of millions, they're not going to treat you as well as maybe a smaller provider, but that smaller provider per unit is going to be more expensive. But you've got to consider this, because these all become very important in terms of your journey of how these people become partners, and obviously how they enhance your business, but more so enhance the customer experience. They're committed to the same standards. All right, we obviously have certain standards and certain ways that we like to do things. I'm just going to turn that a bit. And so make sure they're committed to your standards. All right. So many times I've seen, people that have fairly high standards, and then they'll go and find a partner, a producer or whatever, that is just, they're cutting corners, or they're not committed, or whatever it might be. And particularly if you're offshoring some of your partnership, so it might be a supply that's coming from offshore. You need to be able to protect your intellectual property. You need to be able to trust the people on the ground, wherever it is you're dealing with. You need to be able to trust the supply. I used to work with people in the supply space, particularly human capital, and so we had a lot of, for example, we had a team in the Philippines at one stage, but we needed someone we trusted to manage that team both culturally and physically. All right, so that's a little bit of a look at partnerships. Let's talk about key activities now. So what key activities does your value proposition, remember we're trying to get to the bottom of this, our value proposition. What key activities does your value proposition require? Let's think about some of the key activities here. Operations, marketing, manufacturing, constant improvement, supply, product development, administration, public relations, all those sorts of things. What are the things that the activities that your business needs to engage in? And this is thinking broad and wide, okay? And in those key activities, how do they then connect back to your customer? All right. So let's look at customer relationships, for example. So what are the customer connections that are taking place? How are you actually connecting with your customer? What are the right conversations to be having? All those sorts of things. And so they're things to think about. Distribution channels, all right? How does your offering actually get to your consumer? Okay, so these are activities that have to take place. Think about a company like Amazon, who have thought through, they started off just delivering stuff to your home. It was just, today we just go standard e-commerce. But all the things they've done, and particularly here in the US in terms of Amazon Prime and guaranteeing free delivery and same day, low cost, even drone delivery, those sorts of things, they've thought through that whole value chain. Here in the US, interestingly enough, Walmart, who I'm sure you all have heard of before, Walmart have kind of gone into the same space where they provide a very similar experience to Amazon. One of the things, sadly, that I like about Walmart, and I do like Walmart, but one of the things about Walmart is they also give me a touch and feel experience. I can go to a store. They've got plenty of bricks and mortar stores in most decent sized towns in the US. And I can go to that store and I can actually see and touch, or I can pick it up. If it's not right, I can just give it back straight away and get a refund or get a replacement. But I can also walk around the store looking at product that maybe that's on their app, and I can see the ratings, and I can have that experience, that customer experience, as if I was online. I can look at the ratings, or I can make perfectly informed decision before I even walk into the store, which we did once with my son's PS4. You know, we shopped around online, we looked at Amazon, we looked at all different places, and then we ended up going to Walmart in the Black Friday sales and picked it up for a good price. But we'd already done our research. We knew exactly what we wanted, exactly what was going to be offered, and we knew the ratings and so forth as well. So one other thing here in terms of activities is, how do we monetize? All right. Too many businesses are set up as what I would call not-for-profit today. So, you know, that doesn't mean that there isn't that period of time like you're making paper losses or whatever it might be, but profit's not a bad thing. Making money is not a bad thing. In fact, it's the only way business survives. And so it's the only way you feed into your cash flow loop. It's the only way people trust you. It's the only way you grow something significant. So make sure you're thinking about how you monetize your key activities, okay? Everything has to come. So for example, Amazon Prime's a great example. $12 a month, you get a whole bunch of benefits that probably cost them nothing to deliver, or very little. You know, things like here, you get music, you get a photo storage, you get some cloud storage, you get TV, and then of course you get your Prime delivery as well, which is free, obviously, for Prime members, but you're paying $12 a month for it. And so there are things you've got to think through in terms of, and so they're monetizing that Prime delivery because, you know I don't spend $13 a month on delivery, but I do watch their TV service. So maybe that's a way of making up for it. So the key outcome here is linking your value proposition and your customer relationships. Okay, so think about this for a minute, and how do you link? So we talked about the customer last week. You want to go back and watch that video if you haven't seen it. It'll be on the page somewhere. We'll have to find it, but go back and have a look at that. And we talk about the customer proposition, our value, all those sorts of things, because we've got to think about that first before we really start engineering and designing a great product, because it really is going to come down to the experience. Strategizer, one of the guys who really, actually the visual we posted last week is theirs, and it lays it out as a one-page canvas, basically. And so they talk about 5 channel phases that you go through, particularly when you're looking at key activities. So they first of all talk about awareness. All right. So awareness, and is actually, it almost follows the AIDA model of marketing: awareness, interest, desire, action. In fact, it does follow that. And so, they first of all talk about awareness and what are the things that you're doing in that space. What are the channels you're using to create awareness? What are the activities you need to do when a customer? How do you get a customer to evaluate your product and to connect with you and to start looking at that journey? And how do you get reviews and all those sorts of things? Then there's the key activities around a purchase. Okay, closing a sale is very important. Is your online presence easy to follow? Are your contracts simple to sign? Do you create any barriers, whatever it might be? Is your product easy to find on the shelf? Those sorts of things. And then there's the delivery. All right, so the delivery, it may be something they already pick up, which means you're going through wholesalers and so forth, but delivery may also be online and access to that, and they want to be able to download it quickly, so you'll need reliable servers and you'll need safe and security and all those sorts of things. So how are you delivering this to your customer? In fact, the tech boom has been wonderful for my home country, Australia, because producing products is expensive for Australians because we're on an island. But the tech boom has meant we can just ship it via a pipe, and it's in America instantaneously. And so there's all those sorts of things. Catherine, great to see you here, mate. I hope this is valuable for you. So when we think about these things, so then we've got the delivery, and then of course, once the customer's taken action and once they've purchased, what's the customer experience? Because there's nothing worse, and I don't know about you, but I certainly do. If customer experience isn't up to scratch, I'll let them know. I let them know mainly because I think it's valuable for them to improve. All right, and most good businesses don't get defensive. They take it on board. They apologize. They might even offer you something as a compensation or a thanks for the feedback. But at the end of the day, customer feedback is really important, and you need to encourage that. You need to be able to face up to the stuff that's kind of not working for you. A buddy of mine used to say, sometimes we've got to turn around to a business owner and say, hey, your baby's ugly. and so it's that whole adage of how do we gather that feedback? What is our customer experience? What's the customer service? I've been dealing with different companies here in the US. Some of them have great customer experience, some of them awful. Do you have chat rooms? Do you have message boards? Do you have like a chat facility? Okay, where you can talk directly with a rep rather than having to call them. Do you have a call center? Do you just have nothing? And so thinking about all those things that you have to interact with and making it as simple as possible and getting constant feedback. Very, very, very important. So that's the customer support piece. So the last one, so we've talked about activities, we've talked about partners, now we're going to talk about key resources. Okay? So when we start thinking about key resources, what are the key resources that our value proposition requires? All right, so let's have a think about some of these. So I saw 4 groups of resources here, okay? First of all, financial. All right. They're in no particular order. Financial resources, things like working capital, access to cash, credit. Do you know, I had a very successful business that was very profitable that had no cash. And so having access to cash is so important, and that's where your partnerships come back into it as well. It also comes into the customer relationships, how you're getting money from your customers, how you're handling things like that. So think about financial, working capital, cash, credit access, all those sorts of things. Investors, whatever it might be that's going to really ramp up your business and provide you with the financial resources that you need. Intellectual property is another one, okay? Intellectual property is the stuff that you own that makes your value proposition unique, all right? On the surface, going to the client, they might be able to compare it to 1,000 other products, but there'll be something maybe in the code, there'll be something in the way you make your product, in the way you deliver your product, how you connect. Think about, again, we talked about this last week, think about Lyft or Uber. Lyft is Lyft, it's a company here in the US. And so the whole ride sharing thing basically just mixed online, social, almost a gamification of catching a taxi, hailing a cab. And so just think about those sorts of things. So what is the IP that you own? So when we also look at things like our brand, any patents that we have, any trademarks that we might have, all those sorts of things. These are the things we need to protect. These are the key resources maybe that we're going to need before we go to market, so we can go to market and not be killed in the process. There's also another one that's often overlooked in a business, and that's our knowledge base. Your knowledge, particularly if you're on your own. But as you grow your team, there's a knowledge that grows in that team. And how are you capturing that? How are you capturing your own knowledge? Because at some stage, you may have an exit strategy out of this business. All that intellectual property is the stuff that'll be for sale. And so just think about those things. Think about how that plays in, how your intellectual property, what your knowledge, what your smarts are that add to your value proposition. And remember, we're always tying this back to the customer and to the value proposition. Always tying backwards and forwards. Make sure the customer is at the center of all of this. Another one that I talk about a lot, and I work in this space in both corporate and small business America, is human capital. Okay? And so human capital is basically your people. So human resources, it's how you treat your people, it's how you deal with your people, how you hire and fire, all those sorts of things. And what are the specific roles that you're going to need? What are the specific skill sets you're going to want? What are the attitudes and aptitudes you're going to want to have around your business? All of these become really important. And then how do you then work through a process of constantly improving your business, improving your processes so everybody is being as effective and productive as possible and feels like that they're really serving a great cause. So that's human capital. Physical resources is another one. Obviously, raw materials, suppliers, capital expenditure. So things like premises, vehicles, uniforms, desks, whatever it is that you have. Think about it. Think about all that. Cost of setting up a van. There we go. So that's a capital expenditure for sure, Catherine. And so thinking about the capital expenditure and how you actually are going to handle that. So this is the physical capital Technology. All right. You're going to need, I was just dealing with a client recently and they're rebuilding their server, and that's making the whole communication game inside their company work so much better. Just simple things, and thinking about it in terms of a pragmatic, what are the key resources I need to be effective, to really, at the end of the day, all of this is about how do I get something out to my customer, how do I create a business that is profitable, that adds value to the society that I live in, all that sort of thing. Okay, so that's really it when it comes to the resources. And so we've got to think about all of these key resources, key activities, all these sorts of things, and key channels. What are the things? How does it impact our customer relationship? How do we connect with our customer better? How do we provide a better business? And this is where a business goes on a journey of what I would call, and what anyone would call, constant improvement, because you're constantly reviewing these things and looking at them. How do we better serve our customer? How do we better get our product to market at a more cost-effective way or a more productive way? How do we do these things? How do we provide what we promise to our customers? Because that's what's going to play back into. So if we want to provide something to our customer, we then go back and say, okay, so now how do we do that in terms of our key activities, our key resources, and our key partners? And how do they then enhance that journey? Okay, so for sure that if you have, I think about, for example, BMW, which has their US production plant not far from here, and they have people doing like the leather seats, for example, for those vehicles. Now, for sure, they're not going to be just your average cloth seats. These are going to be high-end, almost hand-woven, but certainly high quality, well inspected, all that sort of thing. So you want a master craftsman doing those things, not just a couple of people in a factory somewhere. So those that's just an example. There's some things you need to think through in terms of how you build your partners, your activities, and resources together. So that's all we've got to talk about today. So that pretty much wraps up the entire upper portion of the model canvas. We will try and finish that up next week in terms of, so we've talked about the external, let's go that way, the external implications, because we have the customer. So when you look at the canvas, you'll see you've got your customer on the right-hand side and you've got your internal considerations on the left-hand side. So it's just a great way to do a fairly simple review of all the things that you need to be doing. But I really recommend, even though we read left to right, go right to left in this case. Think about your customer. I know you've already got your product in mind, you've already got your service in mind. Think about your customer. Think about the ideal person that you want to be working with and how you're going to add value to them. Then come back into your internal considerations. What are the activities, resources? What are the things that we need to be doing? What are the channels that I'm going to function with, and how am I functioning in those channels? At the end of the day, all of this points back to that we're going to plan this thing out, and we're going to do this thing well so that we maximize the opportunities we have to be successful in business. I hope you all have a wonderful week. We've got some really cool stuff coming up this week. We'll be interviewing Mike Baer, who's a buddy of mine here, and he's started companies all over the world, but particularly in Central Asia, Mongolia, countries like that, and has just recently come out of corporate America. So we're going to be talking with him in our Entrepreneur Fireside Chat. So that will be sometime Thursday, US time. We haven't actually set the time with him yet. And then Friday morning, as usual, 9 a.m. US Eastern Daylight Time, Mark and I get on. We sit on Zoom. You can come and join us on Zoom, or you can just join us here live on Facebook. And we just wrap up the week and we talk about different things. Different people every week join us, and we have these wonderful conversations. Go for about 45 minutes to an hour, and we get to really co-work together, which is what we're all about here at Business in Bare Feet and Sandtrax. So really thankful you could be here today. If you're watching later on, feel free to leave comments, and we'll come back, or just reach out to myself or Linda or Mark, and we'd love to connect with you. If you want to come and join Sandtrax community, this is our co-working community. We are getting more and more active and having a lot of fun with the people who are joining. It's $97 as a startup for the initial quarter to come and join, to get access to over 25 high-quality global mentors. It's a great opportunity for you. We look forward to any questions you have, as Linda said here, anything that you need. Thanks very much, Linda. Hope you're doing well over there in France. Good to see you, mates, and look forward to talking with you all soon. I'm Jonathan Brake. As always, enjoy the journey.